Well, welcome to Chapter 10, Employee and Management Development. I've been a manager for many decades in many different companies and in many different industries. It follows that I've also been an employee in many different companies and industries. Among those diverse industries are medical, electronics, textiles, food manufacturing, consulting, education, general manufacturing, wood manufacturing. I cherish that diversity of experience. I learned so much from each company and industry. Some I learned due to the success of the business and the success of our decisions, and some I learned from the mistakes I and others have made. I learned much from my formal education as well, and I also learned from the many training programs in which I've been a participant and a trainer. One thing I learned is that one cannot learn everything needed to be effective in training programs or in the educational classroom. Training and education are the first step, although an important step in personal development, but something else must follow. That last ingredient in development is experience. That said, Vernon Law, who's an ex-professional baseball player, made a good point when he said, "Experience is the worst teacher. It gives the test before presenting the lesson." So, should the order of development be education and training first and experience second? Ideally, probably true, but unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. But that order is important enough that many professions require that order by law. Think about the medical profession. Let's say a nurse. I definitely want the nurse to know how to give a shot, draw blood, take a temperature, etc. That's training. It represents a skill. I also want him or her to know what to do if my temperature is high. I want him or her to understand what that high temperature is doing to my body. That's education. So if the nurse in my doctor's office has awesome training and exceptional education, do I really want to be their first patient? Think about the same scenario, but substitute surgeon or lawyer or auto mechanic or dentist or airline pilot and on for nurse. What follows is experience. And even with proper order and all the education and training in the world is still suspect without experience. And I believe experience is on a continuum. At one end is raw experience, which includes no education and training, but one is just thrust into the job and told, just do it. That represents the OJT issues we talked about earlier. On the other end is experience preceded by both training and education. When I was in the Army and learning to fly a helicopter, we attended classes to become educated in how helicopters work, how to deal with the weather, the rules of flying, etc. They gave us practice in flight simulators that wouldn't allow stupid mistakes to result in crashes. That represented learning the skills of flying. They then had us fly with certified instructors for several hours of additional instruction and to gain experience. But ultimately, the instructor exited the helicopter, smiled, and said, "You're on your own. It's solo time." That's a very sobering time of life. Was I glad I had all that education, training, and experience? You bet. But when the instructor put me on my own, represented the last step in experience, the last step in development, putting what I learned through education and training to work and accepting the risk on my own. At some point, the nurse must give his or her first shot, the lawyer must try his or her first case, and the surgeon must conduct his or her first solo surgery. Experience. One more thing I learned through all of those decades of experience I spoke of earlier: develop managers but not employees equals failure. Develop employees but not managers equals failure. Develop neither equals failure faster. Development is critical. It's the culmination of education and training and experience, and it's a process. So let's explore that process further. Well, welcome once again to Chapter 10. In Chapter 4, I put special emphasis on performance appraisals as part of the needs analysis process. I indicated that performance appraisals should be an integral part of the needs analysis process as well. Henceforth, I will use employee development to mean employee and management development together. After all, managers are employees too. The results of including employee and management data in the needs analysis is really formally identifying employee strengths and weaknesses. And once identified, an organization must plan to address the weaknesses and exploit the strengths in the marketplace. Chapter 10 discusses this planning and action process that provides a competitive advantage through people. The process that's designed to change weaknesses into strengths and recognizes that and applies those strengths of people to the competitive issues at hand. Chapter 10 adds the development piece to education and training. And it is apparent that the need for employee development is growing as our workplace evolves. In my day, sometimes called the good old days, not really, individuals went to work for an organization and stayed their entire career. Those days are over. The authors posit that, quote, people will work for at least 8 companies in their lifetime, end quote. I think I've already met my quota. So, people are leaving organizations and subsequently joining new organizations, and when people leave, they take their individual skills and knowledge with them. Thus, the organization must fill the opening with existing employees or hire new people from the outside. And when we hire new people, we must exhibit future opportunities for development and advancement. Employee development is important to employees in today's workplace, and they demand developmental opportunities. Not finding such opportunities, they will leave even quicker. Any employer not offering developmental opportunities is in a non-competitive position relative to the labor market. And that ultimately translates into a non-competitive position in the marketplace. What are developmental opportunities? Well, the definition is broad in that it includes advancement and promotional opportunities within the organization. It also includes the opportunity for additional education and supportive training activities. Truth is that no organization can provide promotional opportunities for everyone. Therefore, education and training opportunities take on more significance. Providing such opportunities may not significantly decrease turnover in numbers, but it does deter turnover over time. Instead of people leaving in 3 years, they may stay 5, 6, or 7 years before seeking opportunities elsewhere. In other words, training and development opportunities help stabilize the workforce. But in so doing, an organization may actually train, educate, and develop people to move to a different organization. Can you say ironic? Simply put, my opinion is that employee development is a necessity to maintain a competitive position in the product or service marketplace and stabilize the workforce. Obviously, good products and services create a strong competitive advantage, but good people sustain a good competitive advantage, and weak people negate good product and service competitive advantages. Employee development is a business imperative. As I was going through this chapter, I was thinking about examples of talent development. The obvious example is athletics. I don't know who your favorite football team is, or even if you have one, but let's look at the Carolina Panthers. Over the years, they have been on a roller coaster of success. Sometimes the worst team in the league, sometimes among the best, and sometimes in the middle. And where they are now is anyone's guess. But throughout, they have maintained a strong talent search and a strong talent development program. And unfortunately, in the case of football, so have all of their competitors. During my thoughts, I stumbled upon something that I believe is an important lesson for all organizations. We talk about Cam Newton and other superstars as the ticket for success, particularly in the NFL. It is not difficult to recognize the talent of Cam Newton or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or other superstars. Developing that talent further may be a bit tricky, but it is not the real difference between success, mediocrity, and failure. The truly successful teams have superstars, but they also have strong role players to step in when the superstars are injured or not so super any longer. Real success is about how we identify, develop, and utilize the average talent. Those that contribute every day. Those players who just get the work done. If our average talent is better than our competitors' average talent, will we be successful? Or do we have to rely on the whims of superstars? If we can make our average talent the same as the superstars of our competitors, do we win? Now, don't get me wrong. I want superstars just like anyone else, and I believe that they are necessary for success. But a good bench is necessary for long-term success. Superstars are the flash, and role players are the light. You need both. Unfortunately, we ignore the bench. We take them for granted. We concentrate on the superstars. Putting many of the recent chapters together, the message emerges that our culture, strategic plan, needs analysis, etc., should focus on recruiting, selecting, placing, training, and developing the best bench possible, as well as the superstars. An organization full of superstars alone may be unworkable. A mix of magnificent superstars and excellent bench role players is difficult to beat. Talent management and development is about all talent, not just the exceptional. And then, in this respect, I may differ a bit from the authors. And so often, organizations miss this plain truth. But it is not lost on football teams, the military, and strong business entities. Now, many organizations are using talent management, but do not make it a part of their strategic approach to success. That's like saying many people attend school but have no plans to allow that education to impact their lives. Is that strange or what? I say it's strange but true. Some organizations utilize development activities because they feel it's an obligation, but as soon as financial times get tough, they suspend all developmental programs, but those that are absolutely necessary by law. Other organizations utilize talent development programs, but they are unstructured and unorganized. And often development programs are highly individualized and not tied into any specific organizational goals or needs. And still, other organizations don't indulge in talent development at all. They choose to buy talent when needed or settle for the mediocrity already obtained. In other words, if you find a company that does not participate in developmental activities or try to develop talent, that company has chosen mediocrity. And if you've chosen to work for that company, you have chosen mediocrity as well. Many of you may be thinking, well, this guy has obviously worked for organizations where development wasn't important. He's told us about them. That's true. But I have always endeavored to change that priority. And if it became obvious that development, and talent management was not going to be accepted as a priority, I looked for greener pastures in other organizations. What I'm really saying is that employee development activities should receive strong consideration in your criteria for career choice. They certainly have in mind. Making talent management a strategy is making talent management part of the fabric of the organization, a part of the culture. It is understanding that every employee contributes to the success of the organization, and every employee must grow constantly to make that contribution. It is also demanding that employees be committed to continuous learning and continuous improvement. So, if our recruiting, selection, and placement activities are successful, our organization will be full of talented employees. That's great. But what do we do with that talent once we have it? Well, there are really three alternatives. The talent can deteriorate as skills become obsolete and knowledge goes undeveloped. The talent can become frustrated and see a limited future and leave to help another company, perhaps a competitor. Or the talent will be developed and continue to provide contributions to success. It's that simple. There is no neutral ground. Obviously, the intelligent choice is to develop the talent. The text discusses several methods to develop talent once it is identified. I would like to expand on a few of those methods. The first is succession planning. I have instituted some form of succession planning in every organization in which I've had the authority to do so. Almost by definition, succession planning must be tied to the organization's strategic plan to be effective. In addition to providing structure to developmental activities, succession planning provides a common method and definition of talent. It provides a common language about what does good look like in talent development. It's easily tied to the culture. It provides a plan for the future of the individual and the organization, and it provides justification for budgetary expenditures. However, succession planning can be tricky. It can have some disadvantages and limitations as well. Often succession planning will focus on high potential talent already identified. The plan stops at the hypo employee. But what about the individuals not identified as high potential? How do we move people into the high potential ranks out of the average ranks? This narrow focus concentrates efforts on developing talent, but not creating talent. Can talent be created? Well, I believe so. Just ask any athletic team or theater or dance team, etc. Another consideration is how much do you share with employees? When developing a succession planning program, I always point out to leaders that the system can be closed or open. Two ends of a continuum. A closed program develops a succession plan, and the results are not shared with anyone but upper management. In other words, no employee has knowledge of their inclusion or exclusion in the plan or the details of their individual development plan. In an open system, employees know if they are part of the succession plan and the particular career paths targeted for each individual covered in the plan. In a completely open system, everyone knows the targeted career path for everyone else. Obviously, there are a whole range of positions between these two extreme points. Everything on the closed end of the system is very secretive and runs the risk of developing individuals in ways that are contrary to their desired career path. And everything in the open system is public knowledge. I worked in a closed system at RCA. The plan was updated annually, and only the VP of Human Resources, the Director of Compensation and Benefits, myself, and one other human resource management person had knowledge of the details. Outside of HR, only the CEO had knowledge of the details of the plan. It was highly secretive. I do not favor that type of plan and believe its limitations far surpass its benefits. On the other hand, a completely open system runs the risk of alienating and demotivating individuals within the organization. If an individual employee desires to move into a particular position, but knows that someone else is slated for that position, they may choose to leave the organization, or their performance may be impacted. Think about this issue for a moment, and I'm sure you can identify several problems and issues with both ends of the continuum. So one of the primary decisions in succession planning is how much is communicated and to whom in the organization. I prefer a more open program, certainly not the extreme, but the answer really depends on the culture of the organization. But not addressing this issue can destroy the effectiveness of succession planning program. Another developmental program that ties in nicely to succession planning is a corporate university, and I've included a website reference in modules in Canvas. I have been involved in developing several of these programs, both as a consultant and as a leader. As you might expect, in terms of complexity, there is a wide range of corporate university designs possible. One of the more elaborate and effective designs belonged to a medium-sized, privately owned textile firm in North Carolina. This organization dedicated a building complete with classrooms, technology, library, etc. as the corporate university learning center. They hired employees with an HR and/or an education background to run the program on a full-time basis. They required that all employees must receive a minimum amount of training per year, either in the classroom or in some other manner. They published a catalog of classes and programs annually and updated it with changes quarterly, and the catalog was distributed to managers but available to all employees. They brought in instructors from outside to provide classes and programs that fit the needs of employee and organizational strategic plan, and they also coordinated developmental programs in other outside organizations, including full tuition reimbursement program for employees seeking a higher education. And finally, and I believe this is what set them apart from other organizations, they offer the facilities and programs to family members. For example, they offered computer classes to spouses and children of the employee, often conducted in the evening. They offered GED classes for employees and family members who did not graduate from high school. They offered classes to employees and spouses on family-related topics such as how to deal with a teenager. All of these educational endeavors were tracked and fed into an extensive data management system to ensure the efforts and background of all employees was captured, and the results then circled back around as input to the succession planning program. Now, this example points out a very interesting point. The text-less corporate university programs developed and operated by major organizations such as McDonald's and GE and IBM. But it is not relegated to large corporations. A mid-sized textile firm saw the benefit of such an elaborate program tied to their strategic plan. They saw the need, and company ownership had the commitment to the future. Another area of discussion in the text is assessment centers. I've had a lot of experience developing and conducting assessment centers, particularly at RCA. During the late 70s and early 80s, I was an assessment center coordinator, among other jobs, for first-level supervision for RCA Corporation. Each of our assessment center sessions was conducted over 2 days with 12 employees participating in each session, and I suspected we conducted in excess of 30 such sessions. The center focused on the following supervisory and leadership dimensions, among others: written communication skills, verbal communication skills, tolerance for stress, problem solving, judgment, decisiveness, planning and organizing, sensitivity, leadership, etc. Each session included at least 4 different exercises designed to allow participants to display the dimensions in a real-to-life simulation similar to what they would encounter on the job. Trained assessors observed the participant behavior, made notes, and formed judgments as to strengths and weaknesses for each participant. Strength and weakness judgments were reached by unanimous decision among all of the participating assessors. Therefore, each participant's performance in the simulations were judged by multiple well-trained managers, and a final report was generated. The report was explained to the participant, and developmental plans were formulated for each participant, partially based on the results of the assessment center. The assessment center was used as a developmental tool for supervisors already on the job and a selection tool for screening potential supervisors. Therefore, we always had a pool of qualified candidates internally for open supervisory positions. And at times, we utilized the assessment center to screen outside applicants if the open supervisory position was a highly technical position and no internal applicants were available. The assessment center did not measure technical skills, but it did give us a view of the applicant's people skills and leadership abilities. As I said, I used this program throughout our RCA Consumer Electronics Division in all manufacturing facilities. All supervisory candidates had to pass the assessment center prior to being placed in the supervisory role. This requirement created some real benefits to the organization. On more than one occasion, a manager had someone in mind for the next supervisory position, generally their buddy, and that manager was prohibited from promoting their chosen person until they successfully passed the assessment center. On some occasions, the chosen person was prohibited from receiving a promotion, and the manager was forced to choose someone else who had successfully completed the assessment center. Thus, the quality of our first line supervision dramatically improved by all accounts. Prior to the assessment center, most supervisors were males. After implementing the assessment center and requiring successful completion prior to receiving promotion, the number of females in supervision dramatically increased. Another way of putting it is that the good old boy network was destroyed. Talent management is a useful tool for organizations that want to thrive. Talented employees contribute to success, but talent does not stand still. Talent either degrades or leaves if not given attention. Developing talent at all levels has many positive consequences for all organizations, and creating talent is often ignored, but is an important strategy in competing in today's labor market and overall marketplace. And finally, paying attention to developing the average bench may very well define the parameters of success. Simply put, the first step is to identify employee strengths and weaknesses, both individually and organizationally. Second step is to take action to improve the weaknesses and enhance the strengths through education and training. The last step is to provide programs that facilitate gaining the important third ingredient, experience. If I were to ask you to take one important point from this chapter, it is make talent management an important part of your career search. Ask the question in your interviews, what growth opportunities in terms of education and training does your company offer? Or you may ask the interviewer, what types of career development have you participated in or have been made available to you? If the answer is none, we don't have time, or we hope to develop something soon, keep looking. It's a house you can live in, but not a house you can grow in. I can go on and on about this topic with examples and information much longer than you care to sit and listen. But let me sum it up briefly. Be a development and talent management advocate for yourself and others. Continue to learn, grow, and develop personally. And when you obtain that position in management, ensure that your employees value personal growth and development and continuous improvement. Athletic teams and other entities have an extensive methodology to identify talent and develop employees. Guess what? So do good companies. Demand that the organization you join for a career provide well-organized employee development programs. And if you're in HR, create those programs. If you haven't guessed it by now, I'm a strong advocate of developing all employees. I believe superstars are made by those around them as much as their own efforts and skills. Pay attention to the bench. I don't think I have ever met anyone who regretted learning, growing, and developing. But I've sure met many who have regretted not learning, growing, and developing more.